Hello and welcome everyone to the new episode of our The World at Home series, this time focused on gaming and online gaming. We did the previous session focused on streaming video and you can still watch it online. My name is Alex Pavlovich and I'm Director of Product Marketing at Nokia Deepfield. I will be your moderator for today and I'm located in Ottawa, Canada. If you need to leave early, be sure to come back. You can watch the recording of this session at any time later on. Gaming is big, and it's a big business. It's estimated to be 4 times the size of the Hollywood movie industry, and it's growing annually at a double-digit rate. It's also an activity that we engage throughout the day, and even more so in the time of the pandemic. So it's also an activity that causes a lot of network traffic to grow as well. We've seen an increase anywhere between 100 and 150% in many service provider networks worldwide. There is a dedicated session on the gaming in the report we published in November called Nokia Deepfield Network Intelligence Report, so please be sure to check that one out. Today, we will talk about the reality of gaming, the gaming today, and the future of gaming. What does it mean for service providers? What do service providers need to know? And more importantly, what they can do to make the gaming experience better to their customers, for their customers, and also to capitalize on this opportunity. I'm joined today by my two esteemed colleagues from Nokia. Jason Elliott is the head of Service Provider Ecosystem and Partnership Marketing. Hello, Jason.
Hi there, Alex. Thank you very much for having me today.
And Jason has been working with some of the largest communication service providers worldwide on business and service planning for new technologies and applications with a lot of experience and knowledge in gaming. We're also joined by our colleague, Andy Oxenreider from Nokia Deepfield. Andy is a network engineer in Nokia Deepfield, and he is focused on big data, network intelligence, and analytics. Andy has been analyzing and decoding complex and complicated traffic patterns and making it easier for service providers to understand what's going on in their networks from the perspective of traffic, all traffic, but also gaming traffic as well. Hello, Andy. And Andy joins us from his home as well.
Good morning, Alex. Thank you for having me on and ready to get into a very interesting topic.
Well, now that we are all here, let's start. Don't lose time. I would turn to Jason and his experience and knowledge about gaming with larger service providers worldwide. Jason, tell us, what is gaming today? How do people engage in this gaming activity? Where is it taking place? And what modalities of gaming do we see today?
Yeah, this is really interesting, Alex. So typically, we've seen a lot of reports actually in the marketplace right now that the gaming market overall, from a global perspective, is valued at roughly around $150 to $200 billion, and it's expected to reach way over $250 billion by 2025. The key thing here is you typically think about gaming as something that's done by kind of, teenagers, typically they're male, but that's absolutely not the case. We see this market growing exponentially across all different types of demographics, and in terms of age and also gender as well. And that's partly due to the fact that because of the access technologies, the networks we built, it's allowed them to kind of, explore a little bit more in gaming. And if you think about the different categories of players that we have, you have typically, the casual gamers who you might just have a device and they actually play, maybe once a month or something like that, and they're casual pickup games, and they play typically they play kind of like simpler games, not these complex multi-role player, multi-action games. You have kind of more of the prosumers who actually then kind of maybe subscribe to a monthly plan and play kind of like higher end games. And also you have very dedicated gamers. They could be also parts of different teams or sports leagues as well. And they typically, buy their own hardware, and they're kind of like dedicated gamers as well. And there's a whole slew of demographics that go around that, around, how often people play, how much they subscribe to in terms of their gaming profiles as well. So it's very varied. And in general, we see like a large increase in this activity. And typically that's also because obviously we've been through the pandemic and still are, and it's a key leisure activity as well that seems to be picking up as well in this current environment that we're in today. There are also a couple of things to think about too. I think everyone thinks that gamers have specialized hardware, and there's the way that we play games as well is constantly evolving over time. So I remember growing up playing on like a very simplistic dedicated console. Obviously they become a lot more complex and rich now. It was always standalone as well. It didn't connect to anything. So now you have consoles that have very rich experiences, and they're connected to a network where you can actually play with multiple players. And then also you can think about personal computers as well, right? So now we have PCs that are very powerful as well, that can also be highly customized as well. And they're obviously connected to the network as well. So you're seeing very, very large multiplayer complex games going on as well. And obviously with the advent of complex smartphones and tablets as well, and obviously the prevalence of mobile broadband from a wireless perspective, both 4G and then moving into 5G, we've seen a lot of uptake in this market now where mobile devices now are seen as gaming platforms essentially as well. So we're expanding not just for in-home use, but also on the go as well in different environments.
When we discussed this topic a couple of days ago, you were telling me about the evolution of gaming experience. Can you expand on that for our audience, please? So what do you mean by this evolution of gaming experience, and what do gamers today value the most?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So the fact that, as the games are actually becoming more complex, people are starting to realize kind of what's important to them in terms of, what they value overall. And that gaming experience has kind of moved from, that single player activity, something that you just do like on your own, to kind of a multiplayer interactive online scenario right now. So not only do I play and interact with people, I'm also talking to them at the same time as well. So it's not just about the gaming that you're viewing and you're interacting with, but you're actually interacting with them either just through voice communications or sometimes video as well. And this is where we see, platforms like Twitch come in, where people are not only using the inbuilt game capabilities to talk to each other, but they're also broadcasting their experience to a very, very wide audience. So that's another perspective to think about in terms of data and traffic, is the fact that you have the gaming platform itself, the multi-player aspect and the networking technology that goes along with that, but also the broadcast capability that's going on with platforms like Twitch, etc., where you're actually sharing your gaming experience with hundreds and thousands and millions of people effectively as well.
What are your thoughts about the future of gaming? Technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality, are they already here when we talk about gaming, or are they the future of gaming?
Yeah, it's some slow adoption, right? So we've seen kind of more of the dedicated gamers start to move into the VR place. You can see some bundles with certain types of consoles as well. And obviously with the prevalence and the increase in broadband connectivity, these kind of new, more what we call immersive experiences, both kind of VR and AR, are starting to gain a little bit more traction. Not only are the devices becoming a little bit more mature, so the experience is better, it's easier for them to use. The platforms and the applications or the games associated with these applications are becoming more accessible as well. That's kind of one of the areas that we see switching over the next couple of years very intently. So on the one side, we're building out additional broadband capability to be able to stream more data. And the other part of this is the AR and the VR devices are actually becoming easier to use, lower cost price point as well. And when you put all those things together, you can actually see that there's a much more potential for more people in the market to take on these new types of more immersive experiences going forward. And then from a mobile perspective, as you start to think about 5G with much higher bandwidth, lower latency, that's lower delay in the network, we can also see with new types of AR devices coupled with 5G, how that gaming experience will not be just taken from in-home, but also outdoors as well. So you're going to have a whole new range of experiences going forward as we move from this kind of two-dimensional world that we see in kind of 4G and fixed broadband today to what I call a more three-dimensional world going forward with 5G and further broadband connectivity as well.
Thanks. So obviously, high bandwidth and low latency are important. Are there other things that are important for gamers?
Yeah, so one of the things is fast download times. So we're moving to kind of more of cloud game streaming platform, whereas before, it was download and play. But even with download and play, that it's very important to have a very good broadband connection to be able to download the information for the game and actually start playing. The graphics quality as well is really key here in terms of the frames per second and actually the resolution as well. So that's very, very key, and that's all very bandwidth intensive as well. And also latency is such a key issue if you're kind of like at the higher end of the gaming perspective as well. When you start to play with teams and multiple players, the fact that if your network connection has some form of delay, you're actually at a disadvantage from everybody else you're playing with. So the latency piece is very, very key. And it's not just about having the lowest latency possible. It's actually about having a consistent latency. And I'm sure Andy will talk a little bit more about that going forward. But the jitter that's involved and everything like that is very, very key. So they understand those metrics and they're very important to them in terms of connectivity.
You mentioned cloud gaming a couple of times, and we never really properly explained what it is. So we've been talking about online gaming in terms of bandwidth and latency, but what is this cloud gaming? How does it relate to online gaming?
Yeah, so cloud gaming really is now where we have, instead of having the game installed on the actual device, the actual endpoint that the consumer has, it's really taking the content, the execution, so the gaming, the graphics, and hosting it on a centralized server or a server, and then streaming the game to the actual device on a very, very thin client. This is a very different paradigm from the way we've thought about gaming and applications before. So this is where the intent in terms of the network bandwidth and the requirements that are associated with that are really, really key. So if you're relying on a centralized or even an edge compute platform, so where we push the processing closer to the edge of the access network, the notion that you have a compute function that's in the cloud and then you're streaming all of that video traffic for the game itself to the thin client means that that's a very different paradigm in terms of the way you're delivering the game now. It does allow you for a lot of flexibility. So the great things about this is the fact that now I don't have to wait to access the game in the future. So I can literally choose from a library of hundreds of titles. I don't have to wait for them to download. I can access them. The other thing as well is you can switch from multiple different types of devices as well. So I could be playing on a smartphone at one point, I could be playing on my big TV screen at home, and I could stop and then transfer back to a tablet device as well. So it provides a lot of flexibility in terms of the different types of games I play from the content library, and also the way I play and execute those games from a device perspective as well.
So in other words, we need broadband connectivity for online and cloud gaming, and these are not mutually exclusive terms. What is the appeal of 5G as a technology to deliver better experience, specifically for gamers?
Yeah, so when you think about it, there's a recent study from GSMA Intelligence that talks about, there are 2 billion people that play games on a monthly basis right now. So that's a huge group. But, thinking about how you can convert those casual gamers to kind of more of a subscription model over time is a really, really interesting proposition here. And even if you just capture a fairly small percentage of that, it's still like a huge potential base. And I think that as we start to evolve broadband connectivity, particularly with 5G, and obviously the more complex devices that are coming out now that we see in the future, if you target existing gamers, they are actually more likely to upgrade to 5G necessarily than some other subscribers right now, because they see the benefit of 5G as providing higher bandwidth, lower latency, more consistency in the connection to be able to do that. That's a really interesting proposition there. And when service providers think about, their 5G go-to-market strategies, they should really think about how they can maybe target that kind of demographic of gamers from a 5G perspective going forward, because it looks like they understand the benefits of 5G. They have a use case. They're already using gaming. They see cloud gaming streaming as a great way to do this. So that's a really good target market to have a look at.
Great. So it's really a combination of technology, clever marketing, and the opportunity to address these new audiences that are gaming more and more. What do you see as key recommendations or key suggestions for service providers in your discussions with them? Where are the opportunities for them to improve their existing models and to move into new models or potentially partnerships?
So you could start to build your own kind of gaming platform, or partner with existing game developers or gaming platforms to be able to do that, and use that as a content bundle mechanism to be able to do this. One of the interesting things is, a lot of the barriers to entry for sometimes gaming, and also this will apply as we get towards AR and VR as well, is to reduce that friction or that barrier to entry into the market is making it a lot simpler for people to be able to access that. So bundling services together is definitely one way to go here to actually create more value, and then it'll be an easier kind of uptake mechanism for those subscribers that are in the market today. There's definitely a more complex business model there to be had in terms of where you want to play, in the value chain, so more than just connectivity, figuring out the partnership between the gaming developer, also the platform itself, and where it's hosted as well overall is a key thing to look at in your overall strategy going forward. But I think when you look at the market generally and you think about broadband connectivity, it's basically changing what we do in a way in terms of how we experience and interact. We've gone from having, what I call connections of convenience to do things like how we work, how we shop, entertain ourselves and stuff like that, to really kind of networks of necessity. And, gaming is just one of those aspects that we see rising continually, because we're now having a digitally native generation starting to come into the workforce, and they expect much, much higher quality. They work, they play, they live online all of the time. So there's a huge opportunity there. But at the same time, as a service provider, you have to be aware that this traffic growth is increasing, and the different types of traffic, especially associated with cloud gaming, is very, very important to have a look at. But the combination of 5G, fixed line broad connectivity, and the rise of this digital native generation means there's massive opportunity there going forward.
Thanks so much, Jason. I think you mentioned one very important aspect of gaming, which is really the broadband connectivity and the bandwidth that we need as a essential thing that we can build on as consumers, as end users. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn this conversation to Andy Oxenreider, network engineer from Nokia Deepfield, which is a part of Deepfield focused on network analytics, intelligence, and security. But speaking of traffic that relates to gaming and online gaming, we've seen that Verizon, for example, in March, just the first week after the pandemic was declared in the US, reported a 75% increase in gaming traffic alone. Nokia Deepfield released a network intelligence report, Networks in 2020, in November last year, in which we captured a dedicated section on gaming. And we've worked with many service providers worldwide, and we've noticed gaming traffic increases anywhere between 100 and 150%. But we just talked about gaming traffic as kind of a one, obscure category. Andy, can you give us just some more insight into what do we mean when we talk about gaming traffic, and what are potentially different variants of that traffic in service providers' networks?
Certainly, Alex. I was actually approached in the pre-pandemic period by several service providers who really wanted to get a handle on what these trends that Jason's talking about means for their networks, and it's only increased in the post-pandemic era. So what we're talking about when we talk about game traffic, and Jason talked about the types of gaming and the types of consumer, what we concentrate on is kind of that middle segment of the market that he identified, sort of the prosumer. A lot of the ISPs that came to me wanted to talk about, the pro gamers, the esports competitions, things like that. Those are usually hosted in dedicated facilities. It's sort of the prosumer gamer that really has the impetus to get a better connection to improve their game experience. But to understand why, how you improve these user experiences, you need to understand the traffic. And there's many different types of game traffic that sort of fall under 3 or 4 large categories. First of all, we have game download traffic. Game download traffic is sort of the thing that makes the headlines. When we talk about how things have increased 150%, or how service providers struggle with a large update like the recent Fortnite and Call of Duty updates, that's game download traffic. As Jason said, the preparing to game part of the traffic. It's downloading the game onto your console or PC, installing updates, new levels, new characters, things like that. And these updates can be very large. There's actually an effort ongoing to try and make them smaller because it's causing ISPs issues. So as far as the types of gaming traffic we are looking at, this is the most like a classical network optimization task that ISPs deal with every day. They are large downloads, static traffic, usually come from content delivery networks or CDNs. These are fairly well known, although the problem with games is they come from unexpected places, content delivery networks that aren't on the map, so to speak. So at Deepfield, we specialize in mapping out network traffic for service providers and providing them with insights into how they can improve user experience. So it's fairly well handled by most ISPs. At peak times, it does cause them issues, and that really gets into peering infrastructure, how networks connect to other networks, and improving it in order to give them the fastest download possible, basically. It's a classic network optimization tactic. Now, as far as the other types of traffic, it's a specialized type of traffic that ISPs have only occasionally had to deal with before. So we have the preparing for gaming part, which is the downloads, the updates. We have the actual gaming, whether that's cloud gaming, as Jason mentioned, streaming to a thin client, or real-time gaming traffic. That's sort of where my journey started in investigating this. And then we have sharing the experience, uploading to Twitch, talking to your friends on instant messengers like Discord. All of these have different requirements, but the thing about the gaming and experience parts are they require something that's a little more unusual. They don't require just bulk data. They require better latency, that is the shorter time to get from point A to point B. And it really helps if you can reduce the jitter, that is to say, from packet A to packet B, if packet A takes 5 milliseconds, packet B shouldn't take 10 milliseconds. So all of these have really difficult to solve problems, but they're all solvable by improved peering infrastructure and improving routing within networks. So as I said, Game downloads and updates are bulk static data. They come from CDNs. Some of them are the usual suspects, the Akamais of the world. Some of them are not. One of them that's not usually well covered is Highwinds, which is used by several large game companies to provide their game updates.
So if I understood it correctly, gaming traffic itself is not so much bandwidth intensive, it's more latency demanding, right? What about cloud gaming? Jason mentioned cloud gaming and gave us an introduction to cloud gaming. Can you just give us some insights? How does cloud gaming reflect on overall network traffic?
Right. So cloud gaming kind of brings a hybrid approach into it. We've looked at we've profiled traffic from several game streaming services such as Stadia and Luna, the Google and Amazon offerings, and they can take up to 50 megabits per second of bandwidth. But they also have the highly latency and jitter sensitive characteristic of the traffic that real-time gaming traffic does. You're basically doing a multiplayer game single player, if you're even doing single player. You are sending your inputs to the cloud, which then processes them, generates the image, sends it back down to you. So that latency becomes very important, and jitter really. So some service providers have moved to what Jason talked about with the edge computing model. They move the servers out to the edge towards the customers, getting better latency, better jitter. This is a very difficult problem to solve. The fortunate thing for most providers is it's easy to identify the traffic, and we help them do that. The most difficult to identify part is real-time gaming traffic, where a lot of traffic doesn't even go to servers, it goes to other players. And those network paths aren't usually well optimized.
So is it always hub and spoke architecture for communications flows that you see in gaming? Is it all of us going to the centralized server and coming back, or do we see sometimes some sort of a P2P traffic patterns as we might expect?
It's very mixed, if you will. It depends a lot on game type. So if you look at the ultimate example is an MMO like World of Warcraft, massively multiplayer online games. Those are usually server-based, large data centers. It's usually an easy problem to solve because I want to talk to Blizzard, I go to Blizzard. If you're talking about the actually more latency sensitive games like first-person shooters, a lot of those have moved to a peer-to-peer quote-unquote server model where they don't have a server at all. They just, in order to be able to scale better, have lower infrastructure costs, and actually provide a better user experience, it's just all of the users talking to the other users, and there's no dedicated server. So it depends on what game you're talking about, and it depends on what type of game you're talking about.
But definitely, it's not a trivial thing to figure out that specific communications flows relate to gaming. Most of our traffic in service providers, most of the traffic in service providers networks comes from the internet anyway these days. So can you just give us some insights into the challenges and how does Nokia Deepfield approach this topic?
Right. So the challenges involved are mostly surrounding identifying the traffic, seeing where it comes from. You know that a service exists. And often it will come from an identifiable service provider, like a game company. What Nokia Deepfield can do is take a look at that traffic, tell you where it's coming from, tell you what parts of the network are stressed by it. Am I talking to a certain service provider and it's getting bottlenecked at a certain network connection? And then help you optimize that traffic.
When you compare video streaming to gaming traffic, for example, what can you say?
So as you see here on the screen, we have two graphs. We call these sunburst graphs. On the left-hand side, you have video traffic. What you can see here is that two specific providers make up about 60% of the market. On the right is gaming traffic. And you can see that same 60% is taken up by about 4 providers, and then from there on down, it stays much more diverse. The problem with gaming traffic is a much more interesting problem, at least to me, than video, because there's many more providers, there's many more network paths, there's many more places to improve your peering, and it's a much more difficult problem for a service provider to optimize for all of these use cases, and that's what we help with.
There is a thing called Deepfield Cloud Genome that helps you with this detection and classification of traffic, including gaming traffic. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Deepfield Cloud Genome is our database of sites on the internet, service providers, and IP addresses, compiled from a number of sources, everything from crawling the net to some data we get from public sources, as well as our own AI engine. And it really helps service providers be able to find out when you say, okay, I want to talk to i3d.net, which is a large game CDN. Who am I actually talking to? Where is that traffic coming from? What IP addresses are serving that traffic? And most importantly, for traffic optimization, what paths do they come in on? So what Genome does is it lets people map those, cloudy named services into specific, okay, the traffic is coming from here, here, and here, and be able to see that the impact on their network.
Nokia Deepfield also allows you to have these multi-dimensional network insights at a glance. Can you just give us a little bit idea how does that work in the context of gaming, for example?
Right. So actually here on the graph, you can see we start off with a site name, which is sort of the heart of Genome. We map site names to various things. So we look at xboxlive.com. Who is serving that? Well, most of it's Microsoft. Some of it's Akamai. And then we go from there to say, okay, well, I'm talking to Akamai. Who am I talking to in order to talk to them? And in Microsoft's case, I'm not actually talking to Microsoft. I'm talking to Edgecast. And then we can see what routers do that flow through and what eventual end user pops do they go to. This is all very important to understand capacity planning and user experience, basically, again, finding those bottlenecks in your network.
How does this help service providers? What they can get out of this information? And what would your suggestions be for improving the gaming experience from a service provider's perspective?
It's basically to find the pinch points in your network. Obviously, as a link to a service becomes more loaded, the chances are that the latency and especially the jitter will increase. So you can do capacity planning. You can find ways to peer with new peering partners to reduce the number of hops you need to get to a place. And you can see where in your network sort of the pain points are. And as far as future traffic optimization goes, it becomes basically a planning exercise, and we can take a look at statistical data to help you plan for the future.
There is also a Deepfield module that allows you to get deeper insights into consumption patterns, right? And then you can use that for potential service planning. We call it subscriber intelligence, but maybe you can expand a little bit on that as an idea how you can take this visibility further all the way to the last mile, all the way to the way the services are delivered and consumed.
So in a gaming context, subscriber intelligence would probably be best used as a method to see our gamers are in this specific area, see what network traffic utilization is like in that area to make sure everything's cleared up and unblocked. Also, we can map service provider tiers to individual users and say, okay, well, all of our gamers are on the silver tier, and what can we do to make their user experience better? One of the things that's most notable about gaming traffic is that it's not all download. There's a significant amount of upload, especially when we get to content sharing. So we can talk about what subscribers are purchasing and how we can help those people realize what they're paying for, basically.
That's great. I think we can get a lot of insights. Thank you so much, Andy, and thank you, Jason. I think we heard some really superb insights today. Hopefully, very interesting to you, or the audience. And as someone said, we're no longer playing games to escape the daily grind. We're playing games, we're engaging in online gaming to recreate it. And similarly, we can do the same thing for trying to create the better future. Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft all want to play in this growing business of online and cloud gaming, and then want you all us to play. Our broadband connections, be it our wireline connections or our future 5G connections, and use of technologies like Wi-Fi 6 in our homes, will play a very important role in this. Service providers need to capture this opportunity and deliver premium experiences so they can optimize their infrastructures, and they can also create better service packages for the end users, gamers. We hope that this session was interesting. Nokia and Nokia Deepfield in particular, would be very happy to help you with discussing this topic further. You can either reach to us to your local Nokia representatives. And for more information, we will be filling some of the chat box or chat window in this event with links to the Nokia Deepfield Network Intelligence Report and to the previous sessions delivered in our The World at Home series, and also to our white paper on cloud gaming and some additional links to other types of collateral and information that might be beneficial to you. This concludes our session today. I would like to thank very much to our guest speakers, Jason and Andy, and I would also like to thank all of you, dear audience, for attending this event. And we hope to see you in our next session in our The World at Home series, which will be delivered soon. Thank you and bye-bye.